Ajay, Manishji, all the distinguished friends from ASSOCHAM. Always a delight to interact with all of you, particularly when we are on the one hand living in challenging global times, on the other hand demonstrating tremendous resilience and ability to steer through the turbulence admirably, continuing to be the world's fastest growing economy. We just saw the IMF number up from 6.4 to 6.6%. We just got the retail inflation number of September, lowest in 8 years, 1.54%. Foreign exchange reserves continue to be robust, about $700 billion. In every respect, the people of India, businesses, industry, and I would say collectively as a nation today, there's a new dynamism, a new enthusiasm, a confidence, a self-confidence that was not witnessed until a few years ago. Gone are the days when India would, for example, since you mentioned free trade agreements, negotiate from a position of weakness. Gone are the days where we would land up doing imbalanced free trade agreements, not really recognizing our own strength, but being in a desperation to do an agreement at any cost, often giving up or ceding more than we get in return. And I think all in all, if one was to reflect on the way the Indian economy has systematically been prepared to address ongoing challenges, future challenges, it clearly demonstrates vision, it demonstrates clarity of understanding, particularly of economics, of finance, or theories related to these subjects, shows a huge commitment to the nation, with the nation first philosophy. Also shows us that the 5 principles on which this government has largely patterned its programs, prepared its agenda, very well articulated by Honorable Prime Minister on 15th August 2022, when we celebrated 75 years of independence. In fact, he reminded us during this year's Independence Day speech from the Red Fort about the 5 Panch Pran. And if you reflect on those Panch Pran, the 5 commitments we gave unto ourselves as a nation, in a way it summarizes both the pathway we have followed in the last few years and what we need to do to become a $30-35 trillion economy by 2047, 8 times today's size. After all, unless we first have a mission or we first have a target, and you are all from the world of business, we all set targets, short term, medium term, long term. And I would suspect when Prime Minister Modi talks of making India a developed nation and brings all of us into that collective resolve that we are going to make India a developed nation by 2047, I don't see this as a long-term target. One would probably not be willing to concede that that's a short-term target, so we can at best agree that it's a medium-term target. That is not the end of our capabilities. That is not our end goal by itself. Just like becoming the 5th largest economy last year, or the 4th largest economy of the world this year, or the 3rd largest economy of the world by 2027, can be considered short-term targets. But in the midterm, when we do celebrate 100 years of our independence in 2047, we would like to see a $20,000 plus per capita income. We would like to see India at the forefront of the fight against climate change, with sustainable growth, with inclusive growth. And therefore a target like getting everybody on board that we have to be a developed nation, Viksit Bharat 2047, is something that each one of us has to not only adopt as our mission in life, not only demonstrate our commitment to achieve it, but wholeheartedly work towards achieving. And the Prime Minister very appropriately gave us the 4 other dimensions which will help us become a developed nation. First and foremost was getting the colonial mindset out of our system. He spoke about respecting traditions, respecting our culture, our rich heritage. You must have heard of Vikas bhi, Virasat bhi. And no nation on earth has ever progressed without deeply recognizing and respecting their own culture, their own traditions, their history, lessons from history. In the same vein, an important element that very often we don't realize the significance of is maintaining the unity and integrity of India. We can't allow some politicians, some people to divide Indian society, the Indian nation, either on language or the north-south divide. It's something which is totally unacceptable to anybody in India. And I clearly see those who speak the language, like we sometimes hear that a state like Karnataka saying that we give so much to the exchequer, so we should get back so much. It demonstrates a complete insensitivity about the way a nation should behave and progress. I mean, imagine tomorrow if Odisha and Jharkhand were to say coal belongs to us and we are not going to give it for power plants to supply to Karnataka or any other part of the country. Could that be a way the country can progress? And therefore the unity and integrity of India, until we all think of the nation first, and certainly don't deride our own nation when we go abroad, as some people do. And finally, when each Indian accepts that it is my duty to be a part of this mission to achieve Viksit Bharat 2047 goal, कर्तव्य भावना से जब तक हम नहीं सोचेंगे तब तक बाकी सब चीजें एक प्रकार से कुछ ही लोगों का जिम्मेदारी बन जाएगी, पूरे देश की जिम्मेदारी नहीं बनेगी. And I think from whatever I get as a feedback when I'm going around the country, meeting people, engaging with chambers of commerce, engaging with bureaucrats, bankers, industry, traders, common man, I think the country has today accepted that we are going to become a developed nation by 2047. And there is absolutely no power on earth that will stop us from achieving this status. And friends, ASSOCHAM clearly is an important organization in this journey. The ideas we receive from ASSOCHAM, the engagement that we are able to do with our startups, our MSME sector, our business and trade ideas that we receive from ASSOCHAM and its teams, the feedback that we get from all of you through ASSOCHAM, the expanse that ASSOCHAM has across the country with several chambers, hundreds and thousands of chambers across the country, aligning themselves with the programs of ASSOCHAM, with the international engagement that we are very proud to be associated with ASSOCHAM on many, many occasions. All of these collectively certainly give a person like me the confidence that together we can surmount any challenges. Working as a team, we can address many issues, many concerns, and as they say, that when you cross one mountain, you only realize that you have many, many more mountains to cross in the ranges ahead. The country certainly has come over the fragile five story of 2014. Today, certainly the world recognizes India as an important trading partner, as an important country to work with, to deal with. Our passport has a value we've never experienced before. When we go and introduce ourselves as Indians, Indian businessmen, Indian artists, Indian citizens, there's a certain respect that we get, that the passport carries, our lineage carries. We've crossed many mountains, but friends, together we have many, many more challenges and mountains to cross. And I invite all of you to be a part of that journey as we navigate turbulent times, as we navigate global volatility, uncertainty. But once we are all in it together, once we work with the spirit of nation first, when we work as a team supporting each other, I'm sure all these challenges will fade away and we'll clearly emerge as a winner. Thank you very much.
Okay. Minister, thank you very much. Given that this was a shorter than usual speech, you will not be spared with any questions. So I'm going to encourage everyone to ask, but let me kick off by asking you, you didn't mention anything about tariffs and trade. And the question is not about US, it's about your strategy on trade and tariffs. You did mention they're negotiating from a position of strength, so that's fine. But give us a quick runaround of what you have achieved and what's in the pipeline as you go around the world, because you've done many countries. So maybe just kick off with that.
Friends, if you see the kind of FTAs that we are working with or trading arrangements, you'll find a clear shift away from countries which are competitors to India, countries with whom we are actually, in a way, on day-to-day basis, working to try and capture different markets, countries which come to India with products, goods and services which straight away impact our own businesses. We have stopped all those type of engagements. So if you recall, while around 2011 or 12, India had voluntarily chosen to start discussing the RCEP and engage with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership grouping, which included China. And till today, I've not been able to figure out why we chose to get into discussions with RCEP. We were not a part of the original grouping. It was ASEAN 10 countries, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and China. We were not there. For some reason, we have still yet to figure it out. The files don't seem to give any explanation. I've tried that route also. The only thing we have is the image of the General Secretary of the then ruling party signing a memorandum of understanding with the Chinese Communist Party. So one doesn't know if there's any connection between the two. But for whatever reason, they chose to join the RCEP negotiation. I remember I became minister on 1st June 2019 for Commerce and Industry. And this was one of the first issues that I was supposed to address, because 4th November, RCEP negotiations were to conclude. I had only 5 months. But in those 5 months, we talked to at least 200 groups of stakeholders. We had 200 meetings. ASSOCHAM must have also organized many at that point of time. And save and except 2 or 3, maybe 5, I don't recall, but I don't think it was more than 2 or 3. Nobody in the country wanted RCEP. It was only an agreement between China and India, a free trade agreement between China and India. We already had the ASEAN agreement, FTA, which is by itself questionable in terms of fairness and equity. We already had an agreement with Japan and Korea, free trade agreement. And for those who are doing business with Japan or Korea, you know the kind of difficulties our products face when we have to export to Japan and Korea. The exports to these two countries have hardly grown after the FTA. Only imports have grown. Exports have hardly grown. If at all they have grown. I think they have not grown at all. Australia, we were on the verge of finalizing, which was aborted because RCEP started. New Zealand, our total trade was $300 million. This was the grouping. So effectively, we were doing an FTA with China. And incidentally, between 2004 and 2014, 10 years, our trade deficit with China, if you look at the 4-5 figure and the 14-15 figure, the 10 years, our trade deficit with China had grown from less than $2 billion to up more than $40 billion. 46 or $48 billion. 26 times our trade deficit had grown in that 10-year period. And despite that, they were looking at doing a free trade agreement in which China would have been a principal participant and beneficiary. I'm sure you must be reading the papers even now that all the ASEAN countries, imports from China has grown massively, almost doubled since RCEP came into force, whereas their exports to China has hardly grown. We changed all that. On 4th November, Prime Minister stood before the whole world and announced India will not join RCEP. And that was a bold decision. Nobody expected it. But that saved Indian industry. Otherwise, Mindaji, you can forget making auto parts in India. Look at the FTAs we've done. Mauritius, they don't compete with us on anything. If at all, we would love to get some more tourists. Australia, they give us iron ore. Actually, no, not even iron ore. No iron ore comes from there. They give us coking coal, primarily, some lentils, and few other items. Nothing much, because there's no manufacturing economy there. But they've opened the doors to a lot of our manufactured products. Automobiles, many products which earlier had duties on them. Also, market access became easier. Our students who go there to study got job opportunities. If any of you is interested, currently there's a shortage of 1 million homes in Australia. They're looking to construct 1 million homes. That's a $500 billion opportunity. I'm just sharing with you that the kind of countries with whom we are doing. UAE, do we compete on anything with UAE? Does anybody feel threatened with an FTA with UAE? But our exports have grown massively after the FTA. And imports have grown, but on imports on what? Gold, which in any case will come from somewhere, and oil. We did an FTA with EFTA countries, the four-nation bloc. $104,000 per capita income in Switzerland. I think in Liechtenstein it's probably $180,000. Any competition to any of you in your businesses at that price point, at that aging population, high cost economy? But along with the FTA, because we didn't get enough, I said, what do we get out of this FTA? So they've committed $100 billion investment in technology, in innovation, in R&D, in manufacturing. Because ultimately all the innovation that they've done all these years, they're not able to get the best value, being too costly to produce there. And they need a trusted partner, which India can be. Because we don't steal anybody's technology. We have strong patent and IPR rules and regulations and law. We protect IPR in India. And we open the doors to 1.4 billion market demand in high quality products which we need from there. UK at $50,000 per capita income, there's not much manufacturing in UK. They manufacture automobiles, steel, and a few other items. It's largely a services economy. And we also benefit from that. We are also exporting services to them. Infosys, you read, just got the NHS order of $1.2 billion. Because with the UK now, you don't have to lose 25% or whatever you pay your workers there or employees there who go from India. Earlier, everybody you sent from India, normally you send somebody for 2-3 years. 12.5% of his salary was deducted. You as an employer paid 12.5%. 25% would go to the treasury in UK with no social security benefits. Once this FTA comes into effect along with the double contribution convention, that 25% will be paid in the Provident Fund account in India. It's a straight saving of the employee, 12.5% which was otherwise gone. Your cost also reduces by 12.5%. You pay that, but in a way it's a payment to the employee. It's a saving. He'll have it in his PF account. He'll get it back. I'm only trying to tell you is that every FTA is very well crafted, is very well thought through. With Australia, we had a double tax that was charged on all our IT companies. We got them to change their law to remove that double tax so we become more competitive while providing services in. Earlier, services was never considered an important element of trade. We recognize that is India's strength. Another 2 years, probably services will exceed the merchandise exports from India. And why not? Michael Porter has told us it's a comparative advantage of every nation. We have an advantage in services, let's grow big in services. It provides jobs, it provides economic activities, and indirectly it gives a huge impetus to manufacturing and the hard economy, the real estate, demand for goods and services, and everything associated with it. So this is what we are working on. We currently are discussing with European Union, 27 nations, US, Chile, Peru, New Zealand, Oman. Tell me if anybody feels any of these can affect your businesses or they can supplement your business. And you will find that that is the strategy, well thought out, in national interest, to support the Indian economy, We are working with advanced economies. We are working with confidence. Also working to create a competitive environment in India through ease of doing business, decriminalization of laws, simplification of process, procedure and compliance burden, so that we can leverage both the India opportunity and the export opportunity. So trade and tariffs are important, but they have to be systematically and carefully planned in the best interest of the country, and also while addressing whether to make sure that it does not hurt the Indian interest. Of course, there's always a give and take. One has to look at the balance of things. In 100 items, there may be 1 or 2 items where you may have had to compromise. That's a part of trade negotiation.
Yeah. Ajay, Amitabh, Mindaji, anybody before we go to the audience, please?
I guess somebody needs to bell this cat, so I will do it. Mr. Goyal, your comments on the US tariffs, please.
We don't negotiate on public platforms like ASSOCHAM.
So Ajay, that's the only question you have? I think you better ask one more.
He's worried about the Boeing supply of his planes and engines.
Okay, open up to anyone. Rajesh, I can see you holding a mic.
So, sir, firstly, very inspiring speech as always. We were in ASSOCHAM meeting, closed group meeting in Bombay also some time back, and you had given us a lot of perspective on the trade negotiations that you've been sort of leading, and we get that clear strategy. My question was actually moving away from there, more specifically to the India story that you mentioned, that we have ambitious target by 2047, and focusing on the growth unlocks specific in our country, and more specifically, I think given the infrastructure development that we've done in India over the years, and we have tremendous amount of focus, physical, digital. What's your view on the travel and tourism unlock that we could potentially do? Because I believe that it has huge potential. And I think we have to do a lot more for us to be able to untap that potential. So, just enlighten us with your thoughts on that.
Well, it's a story of a glass half full. We've seen a significant increase in international tourism also, though domestic tourism is really booming. But international tourism also has probably doubled in the last 10 years. But certainly we can't be happy or satisfied with that. Government is very seized of it. We are conscious that we'll have to bring better connectivity into the play. We'll have to make sure that our tourism sites provide that enabling environment to attract and really make the experience more enjoyable. In the last budget, if I'm not mistaken, there was an announcement for tourism focused at 50 areas, 50 new destinations. And I'm sure my colleagues would be working on that. Having said that, one big challenge before us that I would also like you all to reflect and give us some thoughts on are two. One is, of course, all flights are full. And any significant bump up on international tourism will need significant addition to connectivity. And we are facing a challenge of getting faster delivery of aircraft today. The world is facing a shortage of aircraft. I don't know, post-COVID, what has happened? I thought with work from home and all of that, people would travel less. It just seems to be the contrary. Point one. That is something which is affecting high airfares and inadequate seats availability. Second, I think India needs to have a concerted strategy to attract high spending tourists. What we have not yet been able to get is those tourists who come in and really spend on shopping and spend on large expenditure, large, maybe better rooms, better hotels, better travel modes and all of that. Of course, that will also mean that we need more 5-star, 3-star, 4-star hotels across the country. So that's another area, and by and large the hospitality industry is doing very well these days. So I would think there's no better time than now to invest more in hospitality. Delhi is seeing significant investments, but end of the day as a capital, my sense is that political, diplomatic and business travel will take up a lot of the available resources or available destination capacity right now. We really need to bump up private sector investment also in the associated infrastructure required to support tourism. Maybe more airlines, maybe more aircrafts, maybe more better facilities to stay and travel, and it'll be a joint public-private effort. We are working on plans to see which are those 50 destinations in a challenge mode with the states. We'll ask them to offer destinations and then select the best 50. But I'm sure if the private sector was to also look at investments in hospitality, there's a lot of potential there.
Fair, thank you.
It can be a massive job employment generator as well as exports. This is pure.
Is the highest export foreign exchange earner?
Actually,
highest job creator per dollar invested.
Actually, money spent here by tourists is FDI because it stays here and it goes into consumption. So it's not even temporary flow. It's a permanent flow. Anybody else?
Sir,
can I come in?
ASSOCHAM can probably this year
Sorry.
pick up tourism as a theme
We can do that.
and take that to its logical end.
Sure.
Yeah, sir, namaste. Can I come in here? Here to your left. Yeah. So my name is Aditi and I work with an NBFC which works in rural India. So you talked about sustainability and you talked about the short, medium and long-term goals. So when medium enterprises like us want some validation in sustainability, the gold standard goes to DJSI or MSCI. So we are seeking validation from West, where small players like us are actually struggling to even get an invitation. We should have our own indigenous sustainability index, like Dow Jones Sustainability Index or MSCI. And short term, we can be a leader in South Asia. Medium term, we can have the entire Middle East, and long term, of course, globally. And this will also open opportunities, because when we talk of ESG, entire West is very E-oriented, but India as a special case has social focus. So if we develop this, we can give more recognition and more opportunities to our own people, sir. That's my point here.
It's a very good point, very good suggestion. In fact, Sorin Investment of Sanjay is focused on ESG investments. Little bit.
It doesn't make too much money. So you've got to be very clear how much ESG you do.
But your point is very valid. I think we are at that stage in time where we are making effort towards sustainability within the given resources that are available with the country. But we do feel a little disappointed that what was promised in Paris at COP21 in terms of the developed economies, who are actually the beneficiaries of the damage that has been caused. All this carbon up there was not sent by India or Indian business or Indian people. Supporting 17% of the population, our contribution to the mess up there is only 3.5%, at best 4%. It's the developed world which burnt carbon irrationally so that they could get low-cost energy and are enjoying the fruits of that with very developed economies and large economies. But still, given limitation of resources, we are doing our best to focus on environment, on sustainability, on also balancing inclusive and sustainable growth. We do feel that if the developed world had lived up to their promises of providing low cost, long tenor or grant based funding to the efforts of the less developed and developing countries, we could have probably made the planet a better place to live in much faster. Sadly, they have let us down very badly. And, you know, when you talk to anybody to raise money for any environment related or sustainability related project, I don't think you can get even 10 bips concession to your credit rating or profile interest rate. Not even a 10 bips concession. As Renewable Energy Minister, I went around the whole world trying to raise resources. There's hardly any grant finance available. Occasionally they give small amounts of money for first loss guarantees and expect then the private sector to take over the whole responsibility. And private sector is looking at those large returns, just like their equity returns or debt returns, which don't make sustainability a very attractive use case or investment case. Having said that, India is still fully committed to its sustainability goals. We have in fact exceeded our contribution to what we had promised in Paris. We are continuously evolving our plans. We are already at about 7.8% electric vehicle mobility sales, current sales. Our renewable energy targets of 2030 have already been achieved. 250 gigawatt, which is 50% of our transmission grid capacity, is today clean energy. By 2030, we'll be 500 gigawatt. We are the best destination for data centers today who are looking for clean energy because we have a massive 500 gigawatt grid which provides resilience in the grid, and you can get 24-hour clean energy uninterrupted through a mix of solar, wind, pump storage, battery, collectively. We are also now getting into nuclear, the small nuclear reactors, modular nuclear reactors. We are trying to work with our trusted partners or partner countries to develop or engage with industry to start putting them up in India. So as a nation, we are very committed to sustainability in terms of creating indices or the recognition that smaller players should also get for their contribution to ESG. I think it's a fair point you've raised. SEBI also is going about it systematically. They first focused on the top 500 companies and will gradually take it down the line. We don't want to burden people with too much paperwork or too much reporting as yet. But on a voluntary basis, I think we can look at greater engagement with collecting the data and respecting people for their contribution.
Just one thing I wanted to quickly ask the minister. You know, we all subscribe to this goal of a developed India by 2047 or even earlier. And clearly for that to happen, the current growth rate, though commended by IMF and others, 6.6%, that's probably not going to be enough. And clearly the aspiration is to grow faster than that if at all possible. So for that, what are the top 3 or 4 things you think the private sector can do and the government can do to make this real a reality?
I think it's important that everybody understands 2 issues. First and foremost, nobody can deny that one should never be satisfied. If we are at 6.6, we should be aspiring for 8. Once we reach 8, we'll aspire for double-digit growth. So one should never ever be satisfied with wherever we are or whatever we are doing. And to that extent, I fully agree with you. As a nation, we all have to perk up. We all have to look at faster growth. And we'd love to hear your suggestions or ideas to help us in this journey. There's always a capacity of the economy also to absorb and leverage capital or leverage growth. We'll have to balance our growth rates with the capacity to grow. So if you recall, after the GFC, global financial crisis, Amitabh will be a better person to explain. The country tried to grow faster than we had the capacity to absorb. So in 8, 9, 9, 10, we saw massive growth rates for 2 years, only to collapse so badly after that, that by the time we came into government in 14, we inherited a 4% growth. So you have to have a very balanced and organized growth trajectory. That's point one. Having said that, we are not foolishly making a claim or expecting 2047 to be a $30 trillion plus economy. This is calculated on US dollar terms. And if you see the last 30 years, our economy has grown 10x in the last 30 years in US dollar terms. Even in the last few years, in US dollar terms, our economy has grown at about 9.5%. So when we talk of 6.6% GDP growth at constant prices that the IMF or Reserve Bank or World Bank often come out with, or the government finance ministry comes out with, these are growth rates at constant prices. Whereas the growth of the GDP is usually calculated based on US dollar terms nominal growth, which is at between 9 and 9.5%, which means roughly every 8 years we can double our economy, and which is what makes us believe with confidence that by 2047 we will be a $32 trillion economy.
Minister,
Amitabh, I hope
no,
I'm
you're
reasonable
absolutely
in
right. Your numbers are always right.
Sorry.
So very quick question on, you talked about Viksit Bharat 2047, and one of the important pillars of making that happen would be the MSME sector. We have also identified MSME as one of the 5 pillars in ASSOCHAM. So I'd love to hear from you if you can talk about what are some of the challenges you see in the MSME sector, what the government is doing about it, and then we can pick up some clues from there and also ensure that ASSOCHAM is also kind of pushing their agenda as much as possible. So that'll be great if you can help us.
See, MSME has 3 or 4 challenges, which if you can pick up as an agenda and take it forward, can really help the MSMEs in a big way. Obviously, when we talk to anybody, one of the first challenges that comes out is of capital. And not necessarily equity capital, but the aggregate investment in the business. While ideally, if we can have more investments going into the MSMEs, you will find that that can be very profitable for investment funds also. Given that all the big companies of today, the top 500 companies also, you will see, but ultimately MSMEs maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. It's these MSMEs which have become, Minda ji, you would agree with me? हम सब ने छोटी यूनिट से ही शुरू किया, मेहनत कर करके ग्रो किया है. So I think capital and the equity part of it is something that normally entrepreneurs provide or investors provide. In terms of debt financing, there is an issue with banks having burned their fingers very badly in the past. There is a conservative approach which we do find. I think banks will have to be a little more liberal. I find even where the government is backstopping bank loans given to MSME, even there the bankers are being a little tight-fisted. There's another associated issue is the credit rating of MSMEs. When a MSME goes for credit rating, they are benchmarked to companies much larger to them. So somebody in the steel sector who's an MSME, if he's going in for a credit rating, he's benchmarked to probably JSW Steel, just because he makes a steel product. Now you can't benchmark an MSME to a $1 billion or $130 billion company. So credit rating systems either need to be corrected, or bankers need to, in their record, recalibrate the credit rating that the credit rating agency gives, so that the MSME can get credit at the right price and are not forced to pay 9, 10, 12%, which many MSMEs are today required to pay. Towards that end, I've often made an appeal to big industry, but not yet succeeded in my effort. But I would love to see if all the big guys were willing to, instead of enjoying credit from the MSME, pay them as soon as the goods are approved or services approved. Now, suppose a large company buys various products or services from an MSME and has a 90-day credit cycle. Instead of that, they would approve the service or goods and pay them in 7 days or 15 days. For the big company, even if he has to borrow and pay, the cost will never be much. The AAA, all these big companies can borrow today at, I think, 6.5%, 7% at best. On commercial paper, probably even less. So imagine the delta between a 7% borrowing of the large company and a 12% borrowing of a small company. The large company can even keep that delta. I'm sure the MSME will be happy to pass on that benefit also, give a discount of 1.5% per month for prepayment or advance payment. But the rotation of capital of MSMEs can really help them to grow faster. Now, if ASSOCHAM can do a movement on this, even a simple thing like this, it can have a massive impact. And if 50 companies only were to declare we are going to do this, there will be a resonance in the whole ecosystem. Others, many will be forced to also follow. It will become a question of pride that if company X is willing to pay its MSME in 7 days, then Y and Z will have a peer pressure to do that. So like that, capital challenge can be addressed. Another is the skill gaps, getting good people with skills. That's where the medium and large industries, not micro, small, but medium and large, can play a role by having, like the Mittelstand certification in Germany. If they can take on more apprentices, train them, pay them wages. One of the problems of our skill development is people don't go for proper long skill development programs, given the need to have an income also. So if we can take them as apprentice, train them over a year or 2 years or 3 years, along with the salary, that can become a pool of manpower that will really support the small and micro units also with trained people. Obviously, end of the day, we must all also recognize and respect that when you underpay a person, you're not going to get the best of talent. It's better to pay a little more and get a talented or a skilled person. That will encourage people to go in for skill development. Unless they get a fair wage. Suppose a person was to invest 2 years doing an MBA, and after the MBA program has to go back to the old salary. Do you think anybody is going to do an MBA? So skill development has to be taken up with intelligently in a manner which will encourage people to also adopt those skills or accept that time that they spend, and preferably with an honorarium or some payment. And lastly, the biggest challenge in my humble view is quality consciousness. I think the micro and small units particularly still need to get that quality culture into their working. The larger companies can help them recognize the importance of ISO certification or using intelligent or those Six Sigma manufacturing or good manufacturing practices. So I have often on many occasions, for example, appealed to the pharma industry that unless all the big pharma industry adopts the small guys and introduces GMP into their manufacturing, the nation as a whole will never be able to become a PIC certified pharma manufacturing hub, and we'll keep having accidents like we recently suffered. And all of these are hurting India's image. 2, 3 such instances can cost us really heavy. So I think it'll have to be a joint effort of the big and small, working in partnership, sector by sector, industry by industry, to encourage the small also to come up in life with higher quality consciousness, then India is unstoppable. Thanks.
Vineet? Yeah, that's the last two. Yeah, Vineet and then one more, please.
Actually, a little bit of a comment and just your thoughts on that. I'm just coming back from Silicon Valley, and the kind of impact that we are seeing of AI is just phenomenal, and the kind of investment that is happening globally, including how China has taken a far forward leap. And a lot of that has been supported by the government. We have an AI mission, but the feeling is that it's too small. And we need to 5x or 10x that to really be actually at the forefront of actually job creation versus what potential could be job losses in the future.
I'll take this question also. Excuse me. You wanted a question, right? Just this is the last one, yeah. Then we'll comment together.
So on the in the Independence Day speech, the Prime Minister had called for a critical mission to develop self-sufficiency in critical rare earth minerals and magnets. So what is the government doing in this direction? What initiatives have been taken as far as the international treaties are concerned in this area?
To Vineet's question, while of course one can always argue that we need more capital, I think you must also bear in mind that every dollar invested in India gives you an equivalent output, which if it was invested in America or in Europe or any other country, which is at least 6 or 8 times. Given that our cost of development here is relatively much less than the development internationally. Even data centers, I'm told the cost of setting it up here per megawatt is probably half of what it is internationally. In some cases even lower. What I'm trying to say is that while we may have a limitation of resources today, there's no limitation of our abilities. So if that money is taken up quickly, more money can follow. It's not as if we cannot provide it or will not provide it. We have a 10,000 crore startup fund of funds which has just got announced. We are working out the guidelines. We are looking at almost dedicating the entire amount to deep tech startups. Similarly, we're coming out with 1 lakh crores Anusandhan or innovation fund, which will be available for businesses and industry towards their R&D efforts. Now again, you can look at 1 lakh crores as $12 billion, but if you ask me, it's $100 billion. The same thing done in Switzerland, where the innovation hub is, or done in the US, it's going to cost you $100 billion. So I think that perspective needs to be appreciated. And let's move forward, let's use it. I remember we had a technical textile fund to promote development of technical textiles. And mind you, nearly 70% of global trade now is in man-made textiles and largely moving towards technical textiles. 1,400 crores, that's all. So you would have said it's chicken pea, it's very small. Nani yaad aa gayi, wo 1400 crore disburse karte. There were no proposals coming from industry. And we were ready to pay 95% of the money. We were ready to fund equipment required to be bought, whatever. We could not get proposals. We had to extend the validity of the scheme. We didn't get enough proposals. So somehow, another challenge, not of the MSMEs, but the Indian mindset will have to take on innovation and R&D as a part of business. It's not ancillary to business. It is the core of your business. Otherwise, we'll miss out on opportunities. The world is moving ahead fast. And you will observe that it is only those countries which have innovated, which have focused on R&D, which have really become advanced economies. And we are trying our bit. 4G now is a fully indigenous stack. The Prime Minister has given a clarion call to support Swadeshi. If all of us do that, and that is something, by the way, Mahatma Gandhi had said at an ASSOCHAM AGM. Is that right? He had attended an ASSOCHAM AGM. My memory serves me right. Sometime around that. In an ASSOCHAM AGM, he had first talked about Swadeshi. Yeah, अच्छा हो गया, याद आ गया। ये आप लोग को तो मालूम होना चाहिए सबको। If we all recognize that, we all start supporting each other. Why does Japan and Korea buy only Japanese or Korean steel? Why can a steel mill from India not supply there? Even at $100 a ton, less than their local cost? Not because government is stopping them. The industry will buy only from their own brother industries. हमारे यहाँ पे वो स्पिरिट नहीं है। 10 पैसा भी बच रहा होगा तो आदमी इंपोर्ट कर लेगा। तो एसोचैम के पास मिशंस तो बहुत हैं काम करने के लिए। On rare earths, look at Chile and Peru. Think about it. Why am I doing an FTA with them in the first place? It gives you the answer. Even Australia, the potential is there. In our own country, we are looking at increasing exploration activity. But, and I've been talking to startups engaged in this area, both for recycling of the waste that comes out, from which we can extract rare earths like Loham and all do. And we're also in dialogue with startups to see if we can create the processing of rare earth facility in India, which is currently concentrated in one geography. I think one important lesson for all of us to learn is that we must, and I've said it on occasions in my EPC meetings and all, and the association meetings, we must all assess our respective supply chains. We must see whether we are overtly dependent on any particular geography. It need not be one country, what you are all thinking of. It could be a dependence, let's say, on a Western country. But on any product, if we are overtly dependent on any one country, you are prone to vulnerability, particularly in a world where trade is being used as a weapon. We've seen the weaponization of trade. We've seen the weaponization of supply chains. And therefore, it's important that we all assess our supply chains and make them more robust, wherever possible, self-sufficient and self-reliant. And even otherwise, at least make sure we have sufficient number of options so that we are not vulnerable and not prone to literally an existential risk. Thank you.
I request Mr. Nirmal Minda to please address the audience.
Honorable Shri Piyush Goyal ji, Minister of Commerce and Industry, diplomat dignitaries in the room, ASSOCHAM dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you once again, and thank you very much, sir, for your presence here and sparing your valuable time and your insight and thoughts sharing with us. As we draw this insightful session to a close, it is evident that under the visionary leadership of Shri Piyush Goyal ji, India's trade and investment story has entered a new phase of confidence and global recognition. With export and FDI reaching an all-time high, the number reflects deep trust that global investors and trading partners have placed in India's reform. Recent GST reform, sir, has fueled the economic growth, and in particular auto sector achieving highest growth ever. Today's dialogues has reaffirmed that economic reform 2.0 is about more than a policy. It's about building a competitiveness, attracting high quality investments, and creating sustainable growth across industry. Sir, we are pleased to share ASSOCHAM, as mentioned by the President Sanjay ji, has identified 5 growth pillars aligned with the Honorable Prime Minister vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat and Viksit Bharat initiatives. These 5 pillars growths are as follows. Some of them are already discussed in the meeting today. And first and foremost is Make in India. You mentioned Bharat Atmanirbhar. Means emphasizing localization, technological advancement, competitiveness, research, innovation, and export promotion. I think we all spoke about this in your address. Second pillar is ease of doing business. Here, I think we need to strengthen, we need to look more deeper through policy reforms, infrastructure readiness, and plug-and-play facilities attracting foreign investment. We were talking about MSME. I think we were talking about capital. We were talking about loan, debt. I think you must be knowing that in the Bombay, in good old days, we used to have flatted factories where the MSME don't need to spend money on the land, building, and infrastructure. So we can make this for MSME, uses for plug-and-play facilities, not only for the Indian MSME, but attracting foreign MSME also in India. Pillar 3, simplified financing, we told, MSME pillar. And digital economy, the fourth pillar, fostering startups, industry powered by AI. Vineet mentioned about it. Robust digital platform, cyber security, and global outreach. The last pillar is sustainability, which Madam talked about, and you also spoke, sir, means focusing on environment and climate initiative to meet India's net zero targets. On a personal note, I think he has been gone for the call, but I know, I have had the privilege of knowing him, of the Honorable Minister, for over 30 years. His experience as an industrialist in his earlier years has indeed given him a good insight about real challenge being faced by the Indian industry. Also, he has been committed in his approach towards the creating a conclusive environment for Indian businesses. I must also compliment his leadership in navigating complex issues such as tariff war, which we discussed about, and successfully navigating the various FTA and with flares we spoke about in depth today. Also, I have had a privilege of working with him during my tenure as a president of ECMA. I think similarly, sir, I look forward to your guidance and support as I assume the presidency of ASSOCHAM. In closing, on behalf of ASSOCHAM and all our members, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to Shri Piyush ji for his guidance, his vision, and his unwavering commitments to Indian global leadership in trade and investment. Sir, your efforts have inspired industries to think bigger and faster and collaborate more deeply in building a truly Atmanirbhar Bharat and Viksit Bharat by 2047 and achieves India's goal of $30 trillion economy. Sir, you left outside for a call. I was mentioning that, on a personal note, I was mentioning that I have had a privilege of knowing you for the last over 30 years. And your experience in the industrialist when you were in Bombay in auto parts in your earlier career, sir, and earlier years, has indeed given you a good insight about the real challenges being faced by the MSME and Indian industry. And जो आपने धरती से जुड़े होने की बात बोली है, वो बिल्कुल true है. And sir, I was part of the ECMA president in the past, so I will be taking over the presidency of ASSOCHAM, and I look forward for your guidance and support as in the always. So finally, taking this opportunity, I would like to wish you and your family a very happy and safe Diwali. Dhanyavad, Jai Hind. Thank you very much.
I would now request Mr. Sanjay Nair to please present Akshay Patra certificate to Shri Piyush Goyal ji, Akshay Patra Foundation runs a donation scheme that funds midday meals, and ASSOCHAM has contributed to feed 11,000 children under this scheme. In your name, sir, and we would like to present this certificate to you. I request everybody to please remain seated and not block the aisles. Please give a huge round of applause to Shri Piyush Goyal ji, the Honorable Minister of Commerce and Industry, who has spared the time to come here, share his thoughts with everyone, and patiently answer the questions by audience members here.